Thank you again, everybody, for being here. Welcome to the people who are coming in, to those who are attending today for the first time or the second time. Please, as people come in, if you don't mind typing where you are in the world, and if you have any comments on last week, if you were there at the meeting, we would appreciate that as well. I would like to remind everyone very quickly about the safety rule I mentioned at the first meeting. In order to keep the meeting safe and respectful, we're asking that if you are commenting on something that somebody else has said, that the right way to comment is to say, when Nadra said this, that, and the other thing, I felt or I thought or it reminded me of. And so basically you speak for yourself, you speak about your own impression. You can say how you felt about it, but what we don't want is people acting on their feelings. So if people feel frustrated or angry, we don't want them acting that on other people. Otherwise, this is not a very safe environment. So if that's okay with everybody, there's too many people to ask for a show of hands, but I'm hoping that everybody's okay with that. I need to mention that we already have 4 volunteers, including today, to present each of the four first chapters of the book. There are 6 more, and so I would be asking for volunteers who would like to present. We can only probably time-wise have 1 presenter per session, and it will be about 10-minute presentation, and I can send a very, very short bit of guideline if you contact me. I will put my email address on the chat, and if you would like to volunteer, just email me directly. I can't guarantee that you will get the chapter you want, and we just need 6 more people. So hopefully there will be no infighting and everything will be okay, and we'll manage that. I would like to welcome Nadra. And Nadra is our first presenter, and instead of me introducing her, I think she will probably do an excellent job of introducing herself. Nadra, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can see you and we can hear you, lovely lady. So this is Nadra, our first presenter, and I'm passing over to you to give us a bit of a 10-minute presentation on chapter number 1, which is, well, there were no people on the land. The land was empty, and that was the first chapter. That's what the chapter is about. Palestine was an empty land. So we're over to you, Nadra.
All right, well, thank you so much, everybody. My name is Nadera Issacson. It's a pleasure to be here with you all to share this very important topic. I am Palestinian as well. I'm from Palestinian on my father's side, Venezuelan on my mother's side. I was born in Venezuela, but I have still family remaining in the West Bank, friends in Gaza. And my grandparents, aunts, and uncles were forcibly displaced in the Nakba of 1948. So this is obviously a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, as I think it should be for anybody who has, quite frankly, the humanity to realize that this is something that impacts us all. So starting with here, I'm actually going to provide a summary, Abigail, and then I'll just provide a few of my thoughts and feelings, if that's okay, and we have time. There's also photos, if we have time, pending that we can share to showcase and basically debunk the first myth. So 10 Myths About Israel by Ilan Pappé, Chapter 1, Palestine was an empty land. So as a chapter overview, the first Zionist myth is the depiction of Palestine as an empty, arid, almost desert-like land that was cultivated by the arriving Zionist. And the counter-argument revealed a thriving pre-existing society undergoing accelerated process of modernization and nationalization. So in the beginning, as Ilan noted, the geopolitical space of the Holy Land has been a recognized country since the Roman times. And the general consensus among scholars is that the Romans granted the land the name Palestina. And then Imperial Rome ruled the territory from approximately 20 AD to 360 AD. As Ilan also noted, that during the period of Roman and later Byzantine rule, it was an imperial province, and its fate depended very much on the fortunes of Rome and later Constantinople. And from the mid-7th century onward, Palestine's history was closely linked to the Arabs and Muslims Muslim world, primarily the Sunnis, and various Muslim empires and dynasty actually from the northeast and south of the country tried to control it, since it was home to the second holiest place next to Mecca and Medina, which of course then it's also very enticing land because it had a lot of attractions due to its fertility and strategic location. So then, of course, we have the Ottoman Empire, which occupied the land starting in 1517 and remained there for 400 years. It was reported by researcher Jonathan Mendel that the area had a population of more than 460,000 people, comprised primarily of Muslims, which actually made up 87% of the land, and then 10% Christians and 3% Jewish individuals. So part of the Zionist misinformation that comes from the Israel Foreign Ministry report, which essentially summarizes that the land was mainly Jewish, with primary commerce located in Jewish communities. And following the decline of the Ottoman Empire, the land was barren, the forest destroyed, and the farmland turned to desert. So as Ilan quoted in this story, by 1800, Palestine had become a desert where farmers who did not belong there somehow cultivated parched land that was not theirs. The same land appeared to be an island with significant Jewish population, ruled from the outside by the Ottomans and suffering from the intensive projects that robbed the soil of its fertility. Every passing year, the land became more barren, deforestation increased, and farmland turned to desert. Promoted through an official state website, this fabricated picture is unprecedented. So now when we separate fact from fiction, we actually come to learn the facts, which is that long before the Zionist movement, Palestine was already developing as a nation. Trade was moving throughout Palestine, with coastal ports exchanging with connections in Europe. The educated elites were working towards the formation of an authentic national doctrine with the development of the movement before 1982. And then here are some pictures depicting basically how Palestine was a flourishing nation. Here we have the watermelon market outside of Jaffa Gate at the base of the Citadel walls, and this is in Jerusalem in the 1900s. And then on the right side, you can see 1910 Jaffa Gate in Jerusalem. So Palestinian nationalism actually took over. So before the push for Zionism, Palestine was already solidifying itself as a nation. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the greedy European quest for territories in the Middle East contributed to the solidification of Palestinian nationalism. Palestinians spoke their own languages, that dialect, had their own customs and rituals, and appeared on the maps of the world as living in a country called Palestine, as Ilan Pappé wrote. In the 19th century, Palestine's geopolitical unit became more clearly defined in the wake of administrative reforms initiated from Istanbul, which was the capital of the Ottoman Empire, of course. And that resulted in Palestinian elites seeking independence within a united Syria or United Arab States, which essentially it's no different than that of what we see in the United States. And then in 1916, the land was split into the North and South territories, as we see here in the images, with by the Sykes-Picot Agreement between the British and the French, with assent, of course, from the Russian Empire and Italy. The division fueled a more local variant of nationalism, and Palestine began to see itself as an independent Arab state, so no longer seeking to be part of the United Arabs or Syria, for that matter. So in 1918, under British rule, the territories were united again. And here we have maps that depict this one right here on the far right-hand side is actually from the National Geographic, and this map dates back to 1947. As you can see, there's the recognition right there on the map of Palestine. And then on the other maps, which actually comes from a couple of Bibles in the 1800s, mid-1800s, we have those maps right there as well. And then, of course, comes the betrayal in 1923, while waiting for final international approval of Palestine status, the British government redefined the borders again, and this allowed the Zionist movement to conceptualize geographically as Israel, the land of Israel, where only Jews had the right to the land and its resources. And then we have the myths debunked. So Palestine was not an empty land, but a rich, fertile world undergoing modernization and nationalization. It was not a desert waiting to come into bloom. As Ilan noted, it was a pastoral country on the verge of entering the 20th century as a modern society. Its colonization by the Zionist movement turned this process into a disaster for the majority of the native people living there. The Nakba, or otherwise known as the catastrophe of 1948, which actually did begin in 1947 and extended to 1949, resulted in over 750,000 Palestinians being displaced from their homes, including my family, and over 15,000 Palestinians brutally murdered. More than 531 towns and villages and cities were destroyed. And here we have Students for Justice in Palestine, in honor of the destroyed villages of the Nakba, put together these slides which showcase the majority of the villages that were destroyed. Not all of them are represented here, but there are the majority of the villages showcased on here, as you can see. And then we have here the map of historic Palestine and how slowly it has been taken over by Zionist and the settler colonialist regime. And we have here some images that depict some of that devastation. Of course, as many know, the Palestine was quote unquote conquered by the settler colonialist regime via murders, rapes, displacement of its population. And it has never stopped. We had the Nakba, which actually, it was a setback, which occurred in 1967 as well. And over 400,000 Palestinians were also displaced then. And that basically has persisted until today, as we see with the genocide that's been going on in Gaza and the brutalization of our fellow Palestinians in the West Bank. So here you have some of the comparative images, which are actually very sombering to see. And Euromed Monitor does a good job of keeping up, unfortunately, with the horrific statistics. Currently, right now, over 43,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been murdered. Over 81,560 have been injured. And we have here as well the displacement of 2 million individuals, the targeting of the healthcare infrastructure, 931, of mosques, 667 mosques, 3 churches, 203 heritage sites, civil defense workers. There's been 214 that have been both murdered and injured. And we also have the journalists as well who have been targeted and so forth. So it's, in short, the Nakba, after the Zionists took over, of a land that was actually very, very fruitful, had a strong sense of nationalism, and then forcibly displacing hundreds of thousands, now millions of Palestinians all throughout the world and in historical Palestine, has continued to persist until modern time. And as such, the resistance, which is basically, or even very basic right to exist, is in itself a form of resistance that will continue on till Palestine is free.
كان في أرض وكان في إيدين عم بتعمر تحت الشمس وتحت الريح، وصار في بيوت وصار في شبابيك عم بتزهر، صار في ولاد وبإيديهن في كتاب، وبلاقي الكل ولاد سال الحقد بفيت البيوت، والايدين السودا خلعت الابواب وصارت البيوت طاير، خبرهن عاللي صاير بلكي بيوعى الضمير. يا صوتي ضلك طاير زوبعي هالضماير، خبرهن عاللي صاير بلكي بيوعى الضمير. خبرهن عاللي